All right, I think we can start. So welcome very much to this session. I'm happy to see that there are a lot of people despite the last sort of late afternoon hours, managed to get here. So today in this session, we'll have a look at approaches to navigating open access and fair research workflows by having a look at two different cases. One is a consortium view from Denmark, and the other one is more a university perspective from a UK university. And so this presentation was prepared together with Michael Svensson from the Royal Danish Library, Louise Zambianchi from Lancaster University, and my name is Martin Jagerhorn, and I'm Head of Business Development at Hub. So I work closely with a lot of institutions, consortia, publishers, and funders across the world, trying to solve these common challenges of that open access leads to very often. Michael and Louise could unfortunately not join me today. It's not so easy for them to get travel budgets to travel across the sea. And it's 2 o'clock at night, so they can also not join us online today. But I do have some greetings from them, so you'll see at least their faces and hear a little bit quickly from them a couple of times during this session. Right, so I'll let Michael introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Svensson and I'm Head of Research Support Services at the University of Copenhagen Library, which is under the Royal Danish Library. I really wish I could have been in Charleston at the conference with you guys to present in a warm climate, but I have to be here in the cold Copenhagen, so I send you my coldest regards.
Right, so that's Michael, and Louise is equally here.
Louise Zambianchi, Open Access Manager at Lancaster University. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person at Charleston, but I hope you all have a fantastic conference. It looks a great program.
So we'll hear a little bit more from Michael and Louise a little bit further down the line of this presentation. But we'll start by giving you a little bit of context to the open access journey in Denmark and the UK. And then I'll try to be very brief on Hub and our mission to give time back to research. And then dive more into the actual collaboration and how far we got in terms of solving different open access management challenges, both from a consortium perspective and a university perspective. Then round that up with some lessons learned in all fairness. So if we look at the open access journey in Denmark and the UK, starting with Denmark, well, they established already in 2018 a national strategy to achieve 100% open access of all research outputs from all public institutions in Denmark by next year. So we're getting pretty close to this intriguing, exciting objective and deadline. And the original focus in Denmark was on green open access and deposit that in the local so-called CRIS systems, so current research information systems as we call them in Europe, or rather RIMS systems as we call them here in the US, so research information management systems. And the main purpose of taking a green OA strategy is to say, well, we are not prepared to pay the premium on our subscriptions for a publishing part, and we don't want to pay for individual APCs. So that was the original strategy. We'll see how this turned out. And just for context, the Royal Danish Library has 76 consortium members. That includes a lot of smaller institutions, along with the 8 larger research universities. And so in 2018, when this strategy was established, it was about 35% of all outputs that were open access in one way or the other. So since then, the development has gone in a quite positive direction. Maybe a bit slower during the last few years here, but in the last measurement this year, it was about 75% open access. So even though this is not completely on target, it's fair to say that there is quite a lot of progress in terms of achieving more open access at least. But this has gone not without challenges, as you probably know and suspected. So with the green OA approach, as with most repositories at universities, the main difficulty is to get authors to actually submit their metadata and their full texts. So this means that there are a lot of data missing, a lot of data gaps, and not everything hence becomes open access. And the fact of the matter is also that researchers do publish wherever they like. And as there's more open access journals out there, there are also more APC expenditure. So that was the first sort of round of challenges, and that led to the institutions taking a decision to start to establish transformative agreements. Or read and publish agreements, we should probably rather call them. So since 2021, more and more national agreements have been established, and there are 8 active national OA agreements for the moment. And this leads to other challenges. One part is that each agreement is different. There are not identical conditions, and not all members opt into all agreements. So it's difficult to know who is actually entitled to what. The other part is that data is very fragmented. And now we're only talking about 8 agreements. That's actually not that many. But with 76 members, the consortium today downloads 8 documents in Excel from these 8 different publishers, and then they split them up and upload potentially up to over 600 Excel documents every month. So this is a quite unsustainable and not so scalable way of dealing with the research data. And of course, consolidation and analysis of this becomes almost impossible. Right, so I'll leave you a little bit hanging there on the Danish side of things. And if we turn the view to the UK, then I think it's fair to say that UK has traditionally been very much at the forefront of open access for a long time, very much driven by their funding policies. And this has been promoted a lot through the UKRI, that you probably know about, but in 2018 they regrouped the 7 national funders in UK under the umbrella UKRI. And then the Research Excellence Framework, or the REF, which is, for you that may not know, a national performance assessment exercise that is done roughly about every 7 years. But it plays a crucial role for the institutions in terms of how much funding they will get. Right, so the better you perform in the REF, the more money you get. And the REF has stipulated quite clearly what you need to do to ensure that your outputs are eligible. And one of those criteria is that your outputs have to be open access. So this, of course, drives every institution to ensure that their outputs are open access. And ideally, you should deposit upon article acceptance, which poses some additional challenges on this. And to the context, we have to remember that JISC is sort of a consortium, even though they provide a lot of other services as well. And they have almost all UK universities as members. And so if we then look more specifically at Lancaster University, so it's here in northwestern England, for you that don't know. So it's a top-ranked university in the UK. They have an outstanding library team. 16,000 students, 3,000 staff members roughly, and about 3,000 research outputs every year. And all these research outputs have to be open access in one way or the other. And when we look at open access at Lancaster, well, there are different mechanisms to deal with these outputs. But the first of all is a very small OA team, and there are already over 35 agreements. They have a block grant from the UKRI to pay for APCs for outputs that come out of UKRI-funded grants. As that does not cover all outputs, of course, Lancaster also has a central APC fund, so they can pay for other articles that are not grant-funded from UKRI. Then their approach for Green OA is to put the full text in their CRIS, but then there are a number of uncertainties for the future. So, have you all heard about the JISC report that came out earlier this year? Right. So JISC made a report where they looked into the transformation effect of the transformative agreements, with the conclusion that it's not transformative. Right. So that poses a lot of problems and questions, of course, on the table. And the UKRI policy is also continuously evolving. And they have said, well, maybe we should not pay for APCs any longer, or at least not as block grants. And so there are a lot of things in flux, as always. And so these, at least, are indicators that maybe green open access will be a bigger priority going forward. A little bit uncertain for the moment. So for a university like Lancaster, well, there are challenges along the whole publishing journey. It starts already before the researchers submit to a publisher, because there are complex open access requirements. So how can we know as a researcher which journals to publish in? Are they compliant with this funder's policy now or not? And are funds available in one way or the other? For APCs, well, this small OA team at Lancaster has to collect a lot of data manually and check, is this author truly still affiliated with Lancaster University? Is this a gold or hybrid journal? Is it indexed in DOAJ? And they have to go around on a lot of different websites to collect this information, which causes delays in paying invoices, which delays publication, which creates frustrated researchers, which is the worst, I understand, a library can face. So not a great situation. Agreements. Well, there are more and more agreements, but to a researcher, I think it's not fair to expect that they know and understand what it really means with a read and publish agreement, or these different licenses and all these other conditions. And for a library team, it's of course also difficult. How do we evaluate these agreements? What is a successful agreement? When is it worth it, and when is it not? And for the full text archiving, as already mentioned, the process is quite complex with these curse systems. You have to log in somewhere, navigate through a mystical path, fill in a long form, upload the right document, and then you submit it somewhere and it gets validated and you get it back. And it's very long, complex, so they don't do it to a great extent. And it's very time consuming with a lot of one-to-one email conversations. Maybe you recognize this to some of your institutions, right? So again, we'll leave that there for a little while. And just to give you a brief overview of Chronoshub, I promise not to do this too commercial, hopefully, so you have to stop me if I go too far in that direction. But our aim is, our mission is really to facilitate for researchers. We want them to be focusing on research, not spend time on administration. And we do work not only with institutions and consortia, we also work directly with funders and publishers on the platform, but always trying to put the authors first. So wherever we can do to unburden them, we want to do that. So the Chronoshub platform, if you like, is trying to support this publishing journey for all research outputs, regardless if it's green, gold, hybrid, or actually closed access. So that an institution can use the platform as an instrument to manage all these continuously evolving changes. If it goes more into green OA, or if it's now more on the agreement side, or if you have a central APC fund, or a combination, should not matter. So it starts with a journal guide, providing, ideally, peace of mind to the researchers when they select their journal. They can directly see, this is compliant with my funder's policies. I don't have to pay an APC because there's an agreement covering all of this. Upon article acceptance, they can upload this manuscript. It's automatically scanned and automatically evaluated, seen to the institution's individual funding eligibility criteria, like corresponding author affiliation, really with Lancaster, for example. So for an institution, it's possible to get an overview of all these APC funding requests in one place and only do approve or reject, and that's it. And then in some cases, this triggers a notification to the finance team, they do the payment, or it's a notification to Chronoshub, and Chronoshub does the payment on the institution's behalf. And underlying all of this information is information about the agreements. Which journals are covered by what agreement? So it's possible also in one place to monitor all agreements instead of jumping around in different places. And as we catch the full text along this process, we can also automatically populate CRIS systems or let repositories pull the full text and the metadata that they need, without the researchers having to re-enter any data along this process. So hopefully that gives you an idea in a nutshell what Chronoshub is. And so when we then look at these two different cases of a collaboration to address these typical challenges that we've heard about now, well, if we look at the Royal Danish Library, they use these two modules, the journal guide and the agreement monitoring. So we'll continue to listen to Michael here for, I think, 2 minutes, where he talks us through a little bit, or gives us a little bit an overview of the collaboration. from his perspective.
I just want to tell a bit about our collaboration work with Kronos Hub so far that we had actually since the beginning of 2020, when we started out a small pilot project with one faculty at the University of Copenhagen to be able to better promote some of the deals that we had started with publishers on the Royal Danish Library, some of the negotiations that had a publishing component. So after that successful pilot work, we actually decided to do a full national scale collaboration on the licensing consortium of the Royal Danish Library with Kronos Hub. So here the next 4 years under our strategy with the Ministry of Culture that the Royal Library is under, we have made a 4-year contract with Kronos Hub to better be able to both highlight the journals that are eligible for publishing open access, but also to be better at monitoring and reporting on the deals to the different consortium members. So throughout the last year, we have been working on going live with the Journal Finder from next year. And throughout the next year, we will also work on developing the agreement reporting further. But I'm pretty sure Martin will take over and guide you through this. So I just want to send you my warmest regards, and I hope you will have a wonderful conference. Thank you.
I'm happy we got the warm regards too, and not just the cold regards. Hopefully that gave you sort of a little bit of flavor of that kind of collaboration, quite long term, if you like, where we try to take things stepwise as things evolve, policies and strategies and approaches overall. If we look at Lancaster, well, they have, as you understood already earlier, I think, an approach where they want to support all types of open access, right? So it's green and gold and hybrid. So they are on the journey of using essentially all the different capabilities along this publishing journey or racetrack, as I tend to call it. So we can hear in a similar way, Louise give us a little bit sort of her quick introduction to the collaboration there too.
I just wanted to talk a bit about our partnership with Kronos Hub. We implemented Kronos Hub last year, 2023, and we started with the journal guide. We have a very small open access team at Lancaster, so we needed an efficient open access management system. One of the key things for us is we have lots of read and publish agreements in the United Kingdom. And it's very difficult for our researchers to find what journals are included in those and where there are costs involved and what's free for them. So the journal finder was invaluable. We've also implemented the open access management, payment management system. So we have 2 separate accounts. So it's very easy to see at a glance what we've paid, and we have accounts set up so we can automatically pay invoices once we upload them. There's lots of future developments. I'm sure Martin will tell you lots of exciting things. So again, we want to be able to analyse these open access and read and publish agreements. And Kronos Hub is a great place to do that. So lovely to meet you all. Bye.
Well, thank you, Louise, and thank you for raising the expectations for me to talk about a lot of exciting things. It's up to you to decide how exciting they are. But all right. In any case, so on the next part here, I'll just give you an update on the progress so far on these 4 different steps or sort of sections along the publishing journey. So if we look at the journal guide, it's maybe too small for you to read, but basically Lancaster has its own journal guide. It's publicly available, so you can go to lancaster.kronoshub.io and just have a look for yourselves what it looks like and what you can do there. And it indexes about 50,000 journals that you can filter and search across in various ways. So it does support a lot of different use cases. But the primary use case is really, if you look up an individual journal, to see if there is an institutional agreement covering this journal title. And the text that we see here is also something that the library team can update at any time themselves, so that they can tailor the message directly to their researchers. And so we see this is a quite short text. We'll see another example soon. And if this is probably also too small, but we zoom in a little bit. So you can also select a funder, for example, and then directly see if this journal is compliant with that funder's policy, and if it is, what kind of options you have. And this works not only with Plan S funders that we can get through an integration with the journal checker tool, but CronSub can also do direct assessments of a lot of other funders like NIH and so forth over here. And a rather new addition based on input from institutions and consortia is that you can also filter this journal guide to only see journals that are covered by agreements. And that has been requested by institutions to be more effective in promoting the agreements that they have established. So this incentive facilitates to increase that kind of visibility. These are the agreements, these are the conditions, and it seems that this increases the uptake of the agreements and gives a more quicker return on the investments in those publisher agreements. If we look at the Danish journal finder, I don't know if you've noticed this, we try to talk about this as a journal guide, but all our customers talk about a journal finder. So you can call it whatever you like. In any case, in Denmark, they call it the journal finder. And so if you look at this from a consortium perspective, the main difference is that you do need then to select the institution, right? Because this is public, you can go here too. It's kb.cronshub.io. And then you can select the institution, and based on if this institution has opted into an agreement, you will see that agreement text. And you see in this example, it's a much longer text. Even if you cannot read it, you will see that it's a lot longer. At the same time, the Royal Danish Library has decided and forced us to make this more configurable. So they have chosen to remove a lot of the filters and the links and buttons to really focus only on promoting their agreements. Right. So there are different perspectives and different priorities for different organizations, and our view is that we want to support whatever direction they want to take it into. Underlying then all of this information is the possibility to add all the agreement details in an agreement manager. So this is a self-service. You can simply upload the journal title lists, and for a consortium, you indicate which institutions that have opted into this agreement. And then you can just clone this agreement or duplicate it and make some modifications for a future period or for another publisher, another journal title list. And that means that you can update this description here at any time. And so this is what the Royal Danish Library is doing, Lancaster, and so forth. So that's, in short, what the journal guide does. So that's implemented in operation, and you can have a look at what that looks like. And there is a continuous sort of further development to include some additional support for the use cases. I'll come to a few of those later. If we then turn our review to APC management, we have worked together with Lancaster to see that we create as a low barrier as possible for the authors to make these submissions of APC funding requests. So there is what we call a widget that they can integrate and embed on any web pages. So it's a configurable form, and then it directly checks a number of things. And the authors does not have to do that much. We scan the uploaded manuscript, and we scan the APC invoice. So a lot of things can be populated automatically. And then the platform ensures that it ends up where it needs to end up, whether that is on an approval dashboard for approving and rejecting this APC funding request, and or if it's part of some kind of report. You can see these things online as well. I can make links available later. But the further advantage with this kind of form is you don't have to log in. We can authenticate the users based on their email address, and we check if they have a profile already on the platform. And we can check if they have, for example, Lancaster email address. So a low barrier in that sense. And the other part is that when they walk through here, they get immediate feedback. They don't have to wait for someone to evaluate everything, but they can directly see and do this also as a pre-check if they want to, based on journals and other selections like the funder. And once they submit it, the library team gets an email notification. They click here on the approval dashboard link. They see the items, APC funding requests under pending approval. They click here to see further details. I guess it's too small for you to read, is it? Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, well, in any case, you will have access to these slides, I'm sure, online later, and then you can definitely zoom in and see everything in smallest detail. And we got this example from Lancaster, and so this is actually a real APC funding request. And so you see, you may not see, but there are funding eligibility checks here. Checking automatically if this is a gold or hybrid journal, because I only pay for gold and not hybrid. If the journal is indexed in DOAJ, they don't have to go and check that separately. The corresponding author's affiliation, in this case it's Lancaster. Some institutions have several affiliations that are okay. Medical faculty or medical university and things like that. The license and so forth. Some have caps, so there's an APC cap calculation if you're beyond this cap or not. If we zoom in a little bit, hopefully you can see this though. We do check as well using the same agreement details. Is this journal actually covered by an agreement? So we don't pay an APC that's already covered, or we don't miss out on a discount like in this example where there is a 15% discount. So actually this has also proven to be a quick return on the investment because you leverage your agreements in a very, very effective way. It also checks the funder acknowledgements in the actual manuscript. And extracts that automatically. And this is used then by the library team to decide from which pot of money should this APC be paid. Because if you remember, there is a UKRI block grant and there is a central fund. So if we see this is a UKRI funder, well, they would assign this to the deposit account for the UKRI block grant. And so once this is approved, the £1,551 here, I'm really sorry you cannot read this. I should have thought of a bigger screen. In any case, you can see under pending payment amount on your UKRI block grant deposit account, the 1,551. Right? So it's not yet paid. It's been approved for payment. So this is in the pipeline. You can see how much you deposited, how much that you spent, and how much you left on your deposit account. That is then used across all publishers. Same thing for other accounts like the central APC account. So hopefully that gives you all an understanding of how Lancaster is using this kind of support for their APC funding request. Then we continue along the journey. We are now arriving at the agreement monitoring part. So similar aspect here, an overview of all the agreements in one place. So you can see the quotas, how much that has been published on each agreement, and then you can drill down into the details. And as this is a consortium view, you can see the consortium members here, with University of Copenhagen published a little bit more than some other institutions. And then you can drill down further to University of Copenhagen, and you can see the actual articles that have been covered by this agreement. And then you can download the metadata into Excel if you want to. And this enables the consortium to have an overview of all consortium members, how much they use on each agreement. But as we remember from before, having these 600 Excel documents to upload in a CRM tool every month, well, that's no longer needed. Right? So now each consortium member can have their own access and they can download and see their own data. So it's consolidated and in one place and access to the actual metadata if they want to do further analyses. And the data gets in here in various ways. For some publishers, it can be done automatically because they're already on the platform. In other cases, it's automatically through other services like the OE switchboard. But it does not cover all publishers. And we want to ensure that you can get this consolidated view of all publishers in one place. So there is also a possibility to just upload the Excel file that you get from the publisher or download from their dashboard. And so this is an example where where Lancaster has uploaded a file with 10 articles. One of them was validated. All right, so this was only test data. Don't worry. Usually it's more. But it's important that we don't create a mess. The data quality is really the most important aspect. And so there are a number of checks done here to ensure there are no duplicates, using the DOI primarily for that, but also that this article is really covered by this agreement. So checking that the journal is covered by this agreement, matching it with that, and the different organizations. So if we confirm, we'll only import and add articles to the agreement that are actually supposed to be there. So it doesn't eliminate the work completely in terms of doing things, but it minimizes the work and gets the consolidation and the overview in one place. Then the last part here is the full text archiving. And this is also the part that is still in development. So for Lancaster, they are using Pure as Chris system. So this is an integration that we need to finalize. Once that's finalized, we will reuse data from Pure on the persons, their affiliations on department level, their grants, and their funders. Because then we have exactly the same PIDs, so persistent identifiers, on these entities in both Pure and ChronosHub. And that means that we can fully automate the integration in terms of adding research outputs and full text into Pure without any manual validation. So this is still work in progress. And it means that we will also modify this widget. So the widget will be enabling authors to just answer to 3 questions. Enter their email address, the DOI, and upload the full text. Which is also not nothing, but a lot less than logging into Pure, navigating to the right place, filling in a long form, uploading, and submitting. So maybe in a few months' time, we'll be able to tell you if this worked out well or not. So we'll round this up with some lessons learned. This is in all fairness. And are you all familiar with the FAIR concept? So I turned around. Anyone not familiar with the FAIR concept? No one dares to say no. So, okay, right. I'll give you a quick view if you want to. So first of all, it's really all about the data, right? So we're overwhelmed very often by all these different challenges. Now we started out, it feels like complete darkness, but there is hope. I'll come to that part. But if we look at the data, well, already with journal data, there are so many different challenges. It sounds like it should be so simple, at least compared to article data, because we talk about a lot less data. Journals, well, there are maybe 50, 60, 70, 80,000 potentially journals, but there are millions of articles every year, right? But it's very fundamental that we get the journal data right, otherwise the rest will not be connected, and we cannot do the different kinds of automation that we want to. And this starts with the challenge that there are no persistent identifiers for publishers or imprints in any source that we use. Right? No one has hardly spoken about it, but now I think we're on a good trajectory to solve this challenge too. But for the moment, this is the status quo. And not all journals are covered in the journal guide. So we have 52,000. We know it's not all in the world. There are also new journals coming out and smaller publishers that we may not cover. And not all journals have all the data that we want to support all these use cases. So only 60%, for example, have a subject classification. Not all of them have all the different license options. Not all of them have APC amounts. And so this leads to duplicate publisher names. So if you look at a publisher and filter on that, you won't necessarily see the right journals. If you look at the journals, when you import your title list for an agreement, well, maybe you won't get a match for all of those titles. And there may be different reasons for that. It also means authors are unable to assess some journals because they're simply missing, or they assess a journal but not from all these different aspects. It's similar for article data that we need for APC management and agreements. where publishers do not provide this article data in a standard format. So there are very few standards around, unfortunately. And they don't provide this through any machine readable way, like APIs. And they definitely don't do that very often upon article acceptance. It comes rather later once it's published. So this leads to articles on agreements. They do very often require some kind of manual check. Or data requires manual entry, where there are alternatives sometimes for an import at least. But instead of a seamless integration, which we're aiming for. And data from publishers for monitoring is more okay than for workflow. Right? So if there are no APIs, we cannot send an approval or rejection somewhere. We can get data once it's published, we can monitor what has happened, but we cannot automate the actual interactions around it. So this sounds very dark and terrible and depressing, but there is hope. So the question is, what can and cannot be done? Well, first of all, we have worked quite a lot together with specifically the Danish library, the Danish Royal Library, to improve the journal data. So we have included a number of additional checks and integrations. And so now, earlier, when you imported an agreement with the title list, there were about 5% of the titles missing. Now we are pretty close to 100% coverage. There are still new journals that have come out that we, obviously, for obvious reasons, cannot identify on beforehand. But that starts to look pretty good. Then an approach that can work well, like the Royal Danish Library, is to reduce the complexity and focus on your own specific use cases. Remove things that are more noise than adding to the picture. And that will make the information more consistent, and maybe license options are more confusing for researchers if they don't know what it implies in any case. Then it's helpful if we show them. But we also work quite a lot on deduplicating these publisher names, and we try to do this also together with different partners. Then the third point here, I don't know, are there any publishers in the room? One publisher, all right, two, maybe there are more. So last year we released the Agreement Manager, and now we are about to release a Journal Manager, and we offer this for any publisher completely as a free service. We've concluded when we work with publishers that are very few who haven't identified any tool to actually ensure that you have good journal data and agreement data. And so we want to offer this as a free service, because that means that all the institutions that you as a publisher work with and that we work with will have better journal and agreement data. And it will feature these journals in a better and more consistent way. So that's something that each institution also can leverage in various ways and offer your publishers that kind of service as an option. No, it's not a must, of course. And then we are working quite a lot to automate this data collection from authors. So you've heard about this AI document scanning, which is step by step getting better and better. But so at least we have this kind of combination of integrations and AI scanning to collect the data and get it structured so we can reuse it in an automated way. And then focus on the minimum article data that we need for the use cases. So if we talk about agreement monitoring, we actually don't need that much. Right? If we get a DOI, the corresponding author, their affiliation, and the status, we can enrich these records through the DOIs from a lot of different online sources for other data. But if these 4 different attributes are there in a good quality, we can actually do a pretty good agreement monitoring in an automated way. So the last point here, and for this presentation, is really a recommendation that we want to bring forward to all institutions and consortia, that when you negotiate these agreements with publishers, that you insist on a clause in those agreements that the publishers should provide you with the data that you need to automate these things. Because it's not neglectable, the kind of manual workload and the costs associated with that, if you don't get it. And this should at least include persistent identifiers for articles, the corresponding author, and their affiliation. And if it's possible, to provide the journal and agreement and article metadata in a machine-readable format. This can be easily done through existing services like the OS switchboard, for example. So if you can include this clause of a JSON format over an API with upon acceptance for approvals and rejections, that would be wonderful. And then we all have a bright future. So with that said, thank you very much for listening in, and please connect with us at any time.